thank you for joining us today on Entrepreneur's Edge.
Great, thanks for inviting me. Thanks.
Thank you. Let's talk about what is KAWG&F.
It's a tax, accounting, and consulting firm.
Very long name, so I was hoping you could explain that because I was going to mess it up.
Right.
Okay, so when you say consulting, tax, and
accounting.
And
so we have the
accounting.
basic accounting, tax, your individual 1040s, your small business corporate returns, but we take it one step further. We also consult with business owners and individuals on their financial affairs also about direction, next steps, starting businesses, etc.
Okay. Now, at what point would a small business or entrepreneur come to you?
They should do it right away when they're thinking about that, opening that business and doing something, but as we probably already know.
We know usually that doesn't happen.
Doesn't happen.
It's usually what? April 15th?
Well, April 15th or way down the road when all of a sudden a letter comes in the mail, they're getting audited and say, help, I need an accountant, I don't have one.
Right.
And then it's usually a lot of times too late.
And then they're scrambling and they're calling you and we're trying to fix the mess then.
Right.
Okay, now what type of clients do you represent? Is it just accounting, or is it, what kind of clients could you represent?
We're a fairly large regional accounting tax firm, so we have all different sizes, but our bread and butter is the small business. Obviously, that's the show today, so I want to concentrate on small businesses, but different types, construction, real estate, all type of different industries, retail, wholesale. So we represent, across the board type of industries.
Okay. Now, what advice would you give that's relevant to protecting an entrepreneur and their money, as far as in an accounting sense?
Yeah, it's sort of a broad question, but planning. I mean, it really comes down to, as we talked about, planning, getting your team together, your attorney, your accountant, and really just being sort of frugal on what you're doing, especially in the times where right now with the economy, is just trying to basically look at your expenses, be creative, and also when you're having good years, save for that year that's not going to be as good. And we're seeing that right now where companies have planned, they're going to survive. Those that haven't probably aren't.
Now, how do you plan or project what year is going to be a good year or a bad year?
You can certainly, certainly there's industry standards that clients will use. They obviously will talk sometimes outside their market. A lot of clients now are looking outside and having groups where the Baltimore area, there might be a client that does similar work in the Philadelphia area or in New York. So a lot of times they'll get together and brainstorm and see what's going on in an industry. So yeah, it's sort of projections. Obviously, you don't know what the future is going to hold.
Which is done through the business plan, for those of you who forget to do that. Because it all really, and it's a little off the subject, but it really all comes back to the basic business plan, which is the forecasting and deciding with the businesses and the flow of the business and all of that. So that's good. What else would you say to people who contact you? I'm just starting out. I've got some issues. What can I do on my own? What's the first step I should do? Should I do a charter, or what would you say? What would be the first step?
Basically, we would meet with them, talk about what their business is, and then the type of entity. Should it be a corporation? Should this be an individual sole proprietor, or should it be sort of a LLC, which is a limited liability company? The formation, and then we would talk to their attorney or bring an attorney in. We do not do the paperwork, legal work. So obviously to set up entities, sometimes for licensing and charter, what you've referred to, we don't do that. So we will have to bring in, part of the team is the attorney in that initial process.
Now let me say I'm the client and I'm coming to you and I say, Mr. Kelly, I have this business, help me. Let's just walk through the 5 basic steps of what you would say to me if I came into your office today.
I'll try to count that much, but basically,
1, 2, 3, 4, okay.
What we want to do, obviously, is find out what they're doing. Is it a part-time job? What industry? Because that determines on what method. There's some tax savings in an S corporation, which is sort of popular with small business owners.
And the S corporation is what, for people who don't know?
It's a corporation, legal corporation, but there's an election you file. Your accountant usually will file an election to be what we call a subchapter S corporation, where in essence any profits or losses from that business will go to your individual return. There's some tax benefits we would explain to that person. So
there's 4 different types of businesses you could file, right?
Well, it would be a sole proprietor, which is basically just a Schedule C, not to complicate it too much, but that's part of your 1040. There could be a partnership return, which is a separate tax return called a 1065, and then really just a corporation. There's 2 types. The S Corp, as we just talked about, and then the regular C Corp. So that's sort of the 4 entities, and you just find out what's the right fit. A lot of times people will get way down the road and forget about the entity, and then, oh, I should have been something else, and it's too late.
And you know, actually, that brings me to a good question. What brings me to a question because of a good point you made. A lot of times people don't understand, they think they're LLCs, and they set up their accounting practices to be an LLC, when in essence they're sole proprietors.
Right. So, and that's a great point. You can be, just a technical, you can be a what we call one-person LLC legally.
Right. Okay.
But for accounting and tax purposes, it is treated as a sole proprietor. This is something new, probably the last couple of years. So you can be an LLC, myself, be the only owner, and still have the protection liability-wise, but still file everything on my 1040 as if I was a sole proprietor. If you and I were partners and be an LLC, then we'd have to file a partnership return, and then that's the separate, entity.
So there's different returns that you would file.
But there's definitely confusing. That's obviously what a professional has to help you out with.
Okay, that's great. Now, what else would you like to say? Because we don't have time to really go into a lot of things that I would love to have gone into, like filing the corporations. And one of them I really want to talk about, maybe we'll get you back to do that again.
Great, anytime.
Is what happens when people divorce. Not just in real life, but in business. That's a mess when it comes to accounting, isn't it?
Great, yeah. And what you should do, again, from the startup point of view, you should have what we call like buy-sell agreements and discuss the what-ifs. Do it when you form the entity or when you form the business. Do it now, not wait till something happens, and agree that if we decide to go our separate ways, how are we going to do this?
That is another whole show in itself.
Absolutely.
Because I hear it's quite a nightmare when people split up and then you've got assets, and it's kind of like being married in a sense, but more legally, because you've got buildings and cars and furniture and office equipment.
Absolutely. And most people just rush in, want to get this business, they have this great idea, and they don't worry about what happens if something happens, whether it's death, disability, or just, hey, I want to go my separate ways. Great point, and really, that's the big mistake.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to get you back on the show and talk about that.
Maybe a couple shows,
That's going to be a while, because I hear that one is like a huge thing right now.
Right.
If people want to come to you or contact you, how would they do that?
Our phone number, we have multiple offices. I run our Bel Air office in Harford County. It's 410-879-7911, and just ask for myself, Mark Kelly.
Okay. This was really, I'm just sorry that we don't have more time, because I would really like to pick your brain a little bit more and just really talk about the charters and talk about the licensing and talk about, accounting procedures and standards just for people starting out. But you gave us some pretty good information to start with, so I thank you for that so much.
Thank you, and anytime we come back and we'll talk about those.
All right. I like that. That's cool.